Hey folks, welcome to another episode of On the Trail with Kevin and Scott. I am Scott, the slapstick parts guy that continually on a continuous mission, again to continually saying like continual, to derail poor Kevin's train of thought. I have the continual meetings in my head that he thinks he's there, but he's not really there, but I talk to him like he was there, and to directly across from me would be Kevin. Hi, Kevin.
Yeah, and let me correct that statement. He's not there, and we're talking about Scott and me. So anyway, I'm Kevin, if you haven't figured that out. I'm the engineer, the tech guy, the one who actually reads the manuals, uses the correct tools, kind of follows the rules and is usually successful.
Would that make you the goody tool shoes?
Oh, God.
You guys, we've been out in the field all day. It's a long story. You'll see.
Yes, it is. But whatever works for you.
Yes. So welcome to show 79, I think, this time, right?
I
think it's show
count.
79. If it's not 79, we didn't skip ahead. We're sorry. But I think 78 was Chrissy Johnson with Crawling for the Fallen.
I think you're right. I do believe you're right that this is show 79. Oh, my goodness. We're closing in on magic 3 digits. Can you count that high with your socks on?
No. 1, 2, Earnhardt, 4, Wallace. No. But we do want to say thank you to Chrissy for the show.
And remind everybody, if you get the chance to get down to Florida, Crawling for the Fallen. And if you can't, you can always donate to her and Crawling for the Fallen, or you can donate to your local charities that support the families of fallen first responders.
Yeah, Concerns of Police Survivors, I think it's called, or COPS. And Off-Road United is our main webpage. Mm-hmm. But since we are in the middle of, I want to give a quick little scary shout out to Jeeptoberfest that is happening on October 19th. So it's a couple days after this comes out.
Marion in Central Florida. Yep.
Yeah,
so they've got their website up now, folks, and they've got some really neat drone footage that shows the obstacle course and some of the trail rides. And please understand that trail is defined rather loosely there. It kind of zips. You're going to see the Jeeps coming the other way, and in fact, I think the other Jeeps are part of your obstacles.
Well, it's still a fun time.
Oh, it's a lot of fun. They have had. I mean, this is a great one too. If you're not an experienced Jeeper. Yeah. So the water crossings are actually man-made with concrete linings, so you're not going to go out and suddenly sink in a sinkhole. Yeah.
It was actually our first Jeep event.
Oh, it was? Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. That's cool. That's where you developed the patented
72-point turn?
72-point turn. I thought it was 27, but whatever. So it grows with every telling.
We were new.
We were new. Yeah, but you came home without any damage. There was no trail damage. But it's a really neat venue. It's Markets of Marion is a big flea market kind of a basis, but they've taken one whole area and turned it into this kind of neat little track obstacle course. It's kind of a cross between the beachfront go-kart tracks, but you get to drive your Jeep on it.
Well, those are familiar with it. I would say it's kind of like a Mr. Toad's Wild Ride.
Yeah, that's probably a very good comparison.
A lot of switchbacks, a lot of little fun, a lot of little climbs, all off-camber stuff.
And they have different classes. That's the one where your poor friend kind of tried to suck up my seat cover in the Jeep.
That's where I broke your rear suspension.
Yes. Putting Scott in the back seat with me in the front seat and Tim
Cimatina
in the passenger's front seat, who had never been on an off-road course in his life. And I took on the pipe piles, which is this big pyramid shape of concrete pipes. I'm sure you've seen it at many different Jeeps events. And the size of the pipes made the wheelbase perfect to fall into for a TJ.
Yeah, it was almost maniacal how they planned. This is a perfect width or length for a TJ.
To fall in. But you also have a guy who was on old tires, knew they were old tires, really didn't care what happened to old tires. And so when I fell into the first gap between two pipe piles and was just sitting there, and I realized, 4 low, click. Front lockers, click. Rear lockers, click. Hold on, guys.
Tim sucking up the seat in his pants, click.
And I just kind of kept applying skinny pedal, and I would shimmy to the right as it was sitting there squealing and spinning, and shimmy to the left. And, it was easy for me on the left side, but I didn't know how close I was to the right until I looked at Tim's face. And I could see that.
The more ghost white you got, the closer you were getting.
And about the time I couldn't see Tim because of the tire smoke, the tires got sticky enough that I came unstuck and went right up over all of them, bouncing along. And the problem was one of the third bounces, we kind of came down a little hard. And that's where I learned about polyurethane bushings and TJs don't mix really well.
Shot out like a spitball.
Took out only two spectators, and they did recover fully.
Exactly.
But
22 stitches later.
Well, yeah, but they all gave us standing applauses.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean,
but Markets of Marion's a lot of fun.
Fun time.
Jeeptoberfest, a whole Halloween themed event, and you can go walk the different stall areas and see what they're selling, and vendors and nibbles and foods and that kind of stuff. So it's kind of fun. You're way out in the country in Florida, not near the mouse, not near the water. Just kind of a fun place to be.
Yeah.
What else you got?
Well, this kind of ties into Jeeptoberfest, October Scary. Woo!
Your favorite holiday.
Yeah, it's my favorite holiday. But this kind of led to a cool, because, social media is a constant source of information for us.
And aggravation.
Mostly aggravation. But I stumbled across something on an LJ forum about this is actually kind of hits close to home. A young lady got a little too tipsy on her Jeep and didn't flop it, but it scared her. And she asked, hey, what could I do to basically get over my fear?
So basically, she had a pucker factor, and it's now set in her brain.
Yeah, and that's kind of like, with my wife, Dory. She is a little, she got off camber a couple times, and she's worried about flopping too. And
yeah, I've apologized for that several times.
But she's kind of doing the same thing, and a lot of questions and a lot of things were raised. Some people said, "Well, get a beater Jeep, go out there and just thrash it," And we recently had an event over here at a place called Hard Rock where people took their beater Jeeps and thrashed them with the proper safety gear, and someone got severely injured. So usually that's not always the case.
Yeah.
She asked for, and my opinion was seat time. Get a good spotter.
She asked what though?
Oh, she asked how could she get over her fear.
Oh, okay. So we're looking at a little not Jeep mechanics, but psychology mechanics.
Kind of, yeah.
And you're asking an engineer. Well, that's dangerous.
Well, an engineer solution, because again, people had great ideas. Most of it was get seat times, get a spotter that you trust.
Well, I'm going to lean back on a friend of mine who was a psychiatrist, a good friend of mine, and he's no longer with us, unfortunately. But that's not really part and parcel here. But we spent a lot of time talking about phobias and fears and those kinds of things that kind of haunt people. And he said, well, the human brain being what it is, it's a trained reflex that supposedly keep you safe.
Yeah.
So if something scared you that badly, it usually meant it really was a problem, and so it kind of burns in the psyche. And I said, well, how do you fix those things? And he says, well, usually there's a couple of ways. He said, one, a lot of fears, you've heard the term baseless fear?
Yeah.
Okay. And this is what he was referring to. Is a lot of these are baseless fears, and what you have to do is give them a base. In other words, a frame of reference.
Okay.
How tippy is tippy? Just talking about tippy, if one of the things I can think of right off the top of my head is get an inexpensive inclinometer, which is that little gauge thing you get the suction cup on that sticks on the little bubbles or little pictures of the Jeep that tilt right or left or front up and front down. And then you can't watch them all the time. You can at slow speeds, but kind of glance at them when you're going around the highway curve. And what you find out is you're tilted. You're not tilting, but you're getting as much G-force on a highway curve as you do on a lot of off-camber situations. And it starts to give you a frame of reference. Okay. And then start seeing how much tilt are you actually tilting.
Right.
And there is specs. If you Google rollover angles, now they're going to vary depending on your lift, your tire size. So I'm not going to tell you what the number is for your Jeep.
That's the whole do your research scenario.
That's your doing your research and trying to be conservative. But you're going to find out that your Jeep is far more stable than you think it is. Or, and the thing is you can start out with an inclinometer on a parking lot.
Right.
Okay. In your driveway and say, oh, okay, this is 2 degrees or 3 degrees. And it kind of starts to put some facts into the brain that kind of build a wall against the fear. And then you go out a little bit more. And maybe you don't drive. Maybe you ride with somebody who puts it off camber.
Right.
And it's perfectly safe. But you look at the inclinometer and you go, oh, I'm only tilted 15 degrees. There's 15-degree inclines on highways, not in Florida. I realize that, but you run up in the Carolinas, you run anywhere else, you're going to get much more, angularity kind of things. And and these are just suggestions. Again, remember, it's an engineer talking, not anything else. So at least to my brain, knowing facts helps me to deal with emotions.
Yeah.
So I like the inclinometer thing. If you have money is no object and you really want to get over it, you can get garages who will lift one side of your Jeep while it's secured. It can't roll,
right?
But they'll push it all the way up till it just tips and goes against the safety. And you're going to be if you're in it when they do that, you're going to be like, oh my God, how did it
die?
Yeah, I'm going to die.
Well, we talk about that at the when we do the first classes that you're going to feel like you're going to be dying inside your Jeep. You're only, like you said, 15, 20 degree angle. One thing I did, and I just remembered it, is I put my ramps on one side because I wanted to clean the underside of my Jeep, and I got my wide Jeep on one side, and I thought I was going to fall over. Now I'm on two little Rhino ramps.
Right, and you get out of it, and you look, and you're like, I've lifted it up 12 inches.
Yeah, not even. It was like 7 or 8.
And what you feel and what's actually happening are two different situations.
Yeah.
And the only way that I know of to deal with it, from my perspective, and again, it's just mine, is education. And you slowly work your way up to it. The other thing to do is you can go out on known trails with a spotter that you trust. Trust is key.
Yeah.
And they can watch the uphill side of your Jeep as you're side hilling or doing something a little off camber. And they can watch for suspension lift because the body's going to lift on the spring long before the wheel leaves the ground.
Right.
And so that's one of those situations, again, where you can kind of have someone talk you through, go, no, you're still leaving a tire print, digging in on the top side.
Yeah.
And you're going to find just how much you really can get over. I've had the TJ in situations where stuff was falling off of the dash and the consoles over into the passenger's lap. So I wish there was an easy answer to it, but that's one of those things that seat time does help. But seat time by itself, I'm not so sure about that. Seat time with a reference, either a spotter that tells you you're okay to give you that comfort factor, a seat time with an inclinometer so that you kind of get a feel that, oh, okay, I'm not anywhere near the limits, and you get comfortable with that sensation of off camber.
Right.
I don't know. What have you done?
Well, like I said, the Rhino ramp thing, again, the more seat time, the inclinometer. You talked about maybe get a piece of string.
Oh, a cheap inclinometer is to take a piece of string, tie it to your rear view mirror mount, and then hang a piece of jewelry on it.
Yeah, now we're only talking like a couple, 2 or 3 inches.
Yeah, I'm not talking about something down to the floor, folks. I'm talking something about 2 to 3 inches long.
We don't need some wildly swinging, metal object inside a cabbage or off-roading. I mean, if you need like a ping pong ball on a piece of string, something with just a tiny bit of weight, but nothing that's going to break your windshield.
Yeah,
on 2 or 3 inches.
Yeah,
just to get you
I keep the string short enough that even if you slam on the brakes, it can't swing forward and reach the windshield.
Yeah.
Anything will do, even a Nerf ball. If you got kids and you've got a Nerf ball, for God's sakes, you can stick that on it,
right?
And it's soft, but it will still give you an idea when you look at it, how far off vertical is it? And you're going to be sitting there, man, I got to be tilted at a 45 degrees, and you're going to look over there and the string's about 5 degrees.
Yeah.
The human ear is a funny thing, and we sense level with that, but we also sense it with our other. This gets a little weird, but body fluids. The different fluids in your body move to the low side. You also don't realize that you yourself do things.
Yeah,
you start to tilt your neck. You start to sit yourself sideways in the chair. You start to, and you're compensating. But the thing is each part of your body's reporting, I moved. Well, I moved too. Well, I moved too.
Yeah.
And your brain goes, oh, we must be ready to turn over. and you're really not.
Right.
But, for those, I've spotted and coached people that have flopped on their sides before, and they are really gun shy. But they reported that they thought the reason they flopped on their side is they got to the point where they were like, I should fall over. I haven't yet. I must be Superman, super driver.
Right.
And their confidence overshot.
Yeah.
And the thing was, they admitted they had warning signs.
Yeah.
They had that feeling of bounce only on one side of the Jeep, that floating feeling as because
one side of the suspension unloads or something like that.
One side completely unloads, and you're down to just a couple of pounds on that side, and they goose it or they bump it or they do something that pushes the center of gravity past the tipping point.
Yeah.
If you look at your Jeep, people see a box. But if you look at where the weight is, it's down around the center line of your drive shaft. That's where the center of gravity is, and front to back is going to depend, but it's pretty much up around your toes. Okay, most Jeeps are pretty darn nose heavy.
Yeah.
And it could be even a little forward of your toes. And so the first thing that will tip is typically the uphill rear tire, because there's not much weight pushing down on that.
Yeah, that's where we're talking about unloading.
And that's where the unloading occurs. And when you start to see that opposite front tire, the downhill front tire really compressing down. Now, without a spotter, you don't know if that's compressing down or you're just driving in a hole.
Right.
And the one person I was talking to actually thought it was just weight shift, and they were driving into a hole.
Okay.
And so they ended up flopping on their side. The nice thing was they were dead slow, so it was a very gentle plunk. It cost them a side mirror.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Like rolling, I mean, off-roading is inherently dangerous. We talk about this all the time. I mean, again, it's the ladder of risk we've mentioned before. Just getting in the Jeep, driving anywhere, you're on the first step. Mm-hmm. Are you speeding?
Opening the door.
Are you speeding? That's the second step. It's off-roading. You're on the third step, and that's where we talk about. Okay, people drive with their radios on really loud, especially at events, and not paying attention. Mm-hmm. Put the phone down. Put your hands at 10 and 2. Concentrate what you're doing. Only let the one person be the spotter. You get too many people yelling commands. It can be very confusing for a driver. This is like wheeling 101.
Yep.
But again, keep the constant idea of maintaining control.
Yeah.
And staying calm, because again, your emotions, panicking can set in. Next thing you know, you're stabbing the brakes while you're, like you said, you're loading that front right suspension and you're stabbing the brakes going down a hill. Well, all it takes is that little stab.
If you're near peak, don't scare her too bad.
To offload to offload the left rear. Next thing you know, you're flopping.
But you think about the fact that we've been out teaching new drivers off-roading in a small wash crevice on I wouldn't even call it a hill, really.
Yeah.
Believe me, if anybody other than living in the flatlands of Florida would look at that and laugh and go, that's my backyard.
Yeah.
I get it. But it was enough that if you had a stock Jeep and did not disconnect your sway bars, you could pick a tire up.
Yeah.
Okay. And the first time people bring down there and it would drop off, we'd see first the panic, but then they'd ease off with the, oh my God, I made it. So I probably would recommend to anybody that was having that initial, oh my God, kind of a moment.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can keep doing this again, go out with a spotter, a trained spotter, maybe go see them with someone else and make sure they speak your language.
Yes.
And when I say your language, I don't just mean English. I mean, you understand what they're calling out to you. And the better ones will do more than just say driver, passenger, come forward. They will sit there and go, okay, you're coming off a hump and
right.
Your springs are going to creak, or you're going to lean to the passenger side. You're going to feel this. And that kind of spotting, talking to you about what your Jeep is going to do,
yes,
I find to be the most helpful in teaching both newbies and, like you're talking about, people that have kind of lost that.
They've lost their edge a little bit.
They've lost their edge and they've gained some fears. So
yeah, well, that's like Bob Brisky. He was, that's why Dory loves him as a spotter.
He is great,
and
he's
talks
kind of
about
the one that I emulate.
Yeah, well, I do the same thing. It's, hey, your left wheel, your right front wheel's coming down, and 2 inches, 1 inch, it's going to start coming up. You'll still feel the Jeep coming back up. And me and you, when we did the Jeeping with Judd, when we both did we're observers, not spotters. I tried to emulate that same thing, talk them through what the Jeep is going through. That loud crunch they heard was not the transmission coming out. You hit a steel skid pan that's, X amount thick. It's going to hit for another 3 inches. You're going to hear it. So just give it a little bit of pedal and get off of it. And that's what I did. Because again, it's trying to coach them through their fear.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly what it is.
Again, if it's truly something terrifying that you don't think you can do anymore, it's okay.
It's okay. That's quite all right. They're race car drivers that had winning careers and after a horrible crash walked away from racing because they now can't do it. But in this case, I truly doubt that most people who have had that fear have pushed their Jeep anywhere near the limits. You and I both know that we've seen lots and lots of people out there, and they're pushing their personal limits way more than they're pushing their vehicle limits.
Yeah. Well, and I myself, I eventually want to get with Winrock. Mm-hmm. I want to do some of these really gnarly trails, and basically, it's not. You may receive some vehicle damage. It's going to be something is going to break.
Yeah. And Winrock's up in Tennessee for those that aren't from the central East Coast area, and it's an absolutely awesome wooded off-road park.
Yeah, and like friends of ours go all the time, and you get a bunch of them just went. They came back and got like 5 of the Jeep Trail badge.
Yeah,
just in the one park alone. So that'll tell you what you're dealing with.
So, but as they say, in that kind of a world, it's okay. You just try to keep your Jeep. It's not that you can avoid all damage. You just don't want to break it so bad you can't get it home.
Yeah, and everyone I know that's gone up there, I think almost all of them have trailered their Jeeps.
Yeah, well, that's, again, for those who drive it, not trailer it, I understand the philosophy, but I like to get home.
Yeah.
And I don't want to over-restrict my driving. I want to look at something and go, yeah, I think I can take that. Mm-hmm. Not... Yeah, I've done it before. I have to be. I want to be able to go, okay, if I come down hard and snap an axle, so be it. Yeah. I'm going to cuss. I'm going to fuss.
But I'm going to winch the carcass back on the trailer.
And fix it. Yeah. And I'm going to get home, and my wife will not divorce me.
Well, and that's the thing, too. It's Joy and I are looking at going for Jasper next year. Mm-hmm. And we're looking at renting a truck. We're looking at renting a trailer. We're looking at renting a place, where we stayed last time. We like the idea of doing that. Mm-hmm. We may do that, but again, it's the SEMA at the same weekend of.
We can't do it this year because we're going a little crazy. But hey, I'm gonna go play in Nevada for a little while.
Yeah, no,
you see, we got invited to SEMA Ignited too.
Oh man, I cannot wait.
Party.
Well, real quickly, do you want to take a quick little detour into the garage for a few minutes?
Sure.
All right, we'll be right back after these announcements. Hey, Jeepers. Don't forget to check out all the great four-wheel drive content. I almost said like something else, maybe like food, like calzone or something. I have no idea why
it's dinner time.
Yeah, something like that. On the 4x4 Radio Network, 4x4radionetwork.com, you'll see Trail Chasers, you'll see the Jeep Talk Show, the Center Steer Podcast, the 4x4 Podcast. A lot of great content. Be sure to check it out. And also, like we said before, Crawling for the Fallen, please check out offroadunite.com and jeeptoberfest.com.
And last add to our little announcement is, again, we've got a little bit, but anybody have any questions or specific things they want us to look at, anything you'd like us to report on from SEMA, email us, Facebook us, however you want to contact us.
Send a carrier pigeon on the trail podcast at gmail.com.
Right, because we want to know what you want to hear about, see about, learn about, whatever.
Exactly.
Unless it's edible, in which case Scott will consume it before we leave.
Meat.
You're listening to a 4x4 Radio Network podcast.
And now, from live and not at all direct from the garage, Kevin's garage that is, would be Kevin, the master of the maestro, the master of the crescent wrench, the master of the torque wrench. I'm running out of euphemisms. Hi, Caleb.
That's fine.
I'm going to call you Caleb. Oh, my goodness. It's been such a day.
But you had fun. Yeah, what I was going to talk about here was kind of chasing, again, some odd reactions. About 3 weeks ago, I walked out to Slightly Altered and opened the door and was like,
why didn't my step come down?
My interior lights didn't come on. Nothing dinged. Nothing made noises. The dash didn't move. I'm like,
the nuclear reactor didn't fire up.
Explicative. So quick check with the key, and yep, deceased. Absolutely dead battery. Please stand by for audio and video difficulties. That's very odd because I do have somewhat of a high-end battery in there, and I was like, I really don't think the Odyssey battery died a normal death. Let's put it that way. It's only not even a year old. And so I get out there and I check on it, and yeah, it's doornail. And I'm like, great, why did it die? Start checking to see what the problems are, and I don't even have enough power to start checking, so I'll throw my little 5 amp Schlumbar charger on it. I learned something here. Here's a little pro tip for you.
Okay.
Most of the new chargers are auto voltage sensing.
What does that mean?
It means that if you got a 6-volt battery, it knows it and it will charge the 6-volt battery to 7.2 volts, which is fully charged. If you have a 12-volt battery, it will charge a 12-volt battery to up to 12.8 or 12.9, whatever. Somebody will correct me if I use the wrong ones. That is unless your 12-volt battery happens to be below 6 volts.
What does that mean?
It means it thinks it's a 6-volt battery and it will charge it to 7 volts and quit.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. So I'm going, okay, I don't even know what the problem is at the point. And I'm like, I don't think the battery's bad. And one thing about the Odysseys is they are designed for deep cycle discharge. You really shouldn't run them that far down, but the battery's new and it's good quality, been well. So I'm like, all right, we're going to try an older trick for revitalization.
Right.
Batteries have to be charged with bulk charge, followed by an absorption charge, followed by a float. Those are the 3 basic stages. And bulk charge is just what it sounds like. You're going to ram it with as much power as you can, when the chargers will do.
Right.
And that usually brings the battery up to about 80%. But you can't keep it that long, on that long, because that'll boil out and cause problems internally. You'll boil your electrolytes. You'll cause physical migration of lead on the plates. It's just not a good thing to go past that. Then you have absorption. And what these are is voltage and amperage levels that go into the battery. And then you go to the absorptive charge, and the absorption charge is a lower voltage, closer to the charge, applied at a lower, slower rate that kind of fills in the voids, if you want to call it that way.
Takes it nice and easy.
And then once you've got it up to charged, you can put it on a float, which will go on anywhere from 24 to 48 hours. And that's kind of polishing it on right up to the top.
Right.
So I'm going, okay, what do I have for bulk? I don't have a bulk charger anymore. I haven't needed a bulk charger. Oh, wait a minute. I've got a diesel with 2 massive 12-volt batteries in parallel.
Okay.
I jumped it with that. In fact, I didn't just jump it. I fired up the diesel.
This was a clear.
Yeah. And I dropped on some high amperage charger cables. Now, understand that this is putting out 14, this is bulk charge level, but it's backed up by about 1,600 cold cranking amps of the batteries. And I don't walk away and leave that. All right. But in about 4 or 5 minutes, I reached over and I'm kind of just feeling the case of the battery, and it's like noticeably warmer. Not hot. I can put my hand on it, but it's no longer Florida temperature. It's heading, for tropics. And at that point, I went in and started the Jeep. And needless to say, it's the fastest I think that starter's ever spun the Jeep over.
Boom.
And then went over and carefully disconnected it. Because you are talking about when you're jumping these bigger diesels, if you short your leads out, you're going to arc weld things together.
Yeah, that's not a good thing.
So pulled them all off and then checked my charging voltage, and I made sure that my charging system was operating correctly.
Right.
And it was not damaged. And long story short, at that point, I let it idle for an hour outside, folks. No, I didn't do it in the garage. I rolled it outside and let the battery, charge normally from the internal system. And at that point, I shut it off, and I was at 12.54 volts, which is charged, but still a little sub.
Yeah.
But I threw my little charger back on, and it went, oh, yeah, this is a 12-volt battery.
I can work with this.
Yeah, I can work with this. And it went ahead and charged it up, and I checked it the next day, and it's down still. It kind of went back down, but it was like 11.9. I'm like, not cool. So I'm kind of going through things. I check the terminal connections. I go through everything, and I can't really find anything right away.
Right.
But I go ahead and put the charger back on it. And after going through everything, it sat for 24 hours and fully charged. Everything was hunky-dory. It was green light, going into float level maintenance mode, where it's the charger's just monitoring the battery. When it drops to a certain level, it'll come back on again. Right. And I'm like, oh, well, that's good. I still want to know why it died. And I reached around through the window, across the steering wheel, and in the process, you have your multifunction switch so you have your wipers on the right, and then everything else is on the left, your lights and all that stuff like that.
Right.
And I look at the inside of the garage door, and it's like, wait a minute, my headlights are on. No, my headlights aren't on. My fog lights are on. How are my fog lights on? The switch is off. And I tap the end of the switch, and the fog lights go off. I tap it again. The fog lights come back on again. Yeah. And I start looking at, wait a minute, and I hit my four-way, and it's going instead of click, 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 click. Yeah. All right. I started doing some research, and my multifunction switch in the steering wheel.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that because I had the same problem. Well, I still do, actually. I just pulled the relay and unplugged the lights. But the same thing, you just bump it, and all the time people come to work, hey, man, your headlights are on. Oh.
And
be right back.
And if you leave your headlights on long enough times, you will destroy your battery. So, long story short, that will be a project here very, very shortly. As we will be, I will be out replacing. I got a new multifunction switch, about $50, which isn't too bad for a TJ, and it's up in your steering column. And I'm going to go ahead and replace that.
Yeah,
and see if I can not have a short.
Yeah, it's no fun. And then once I see how easy it is for you to do it, I may do it myself.
Well, that's fine, and then you can always give me a shout. I don't think it'll be too big of a deal. So,
Kevin,
can you drive it? No. Okay. I got parts everywhere. Just.
I need an adult.
So, long story short, there's a lot of info, and I'm not going to do another run through on the electrical. But when you start, sometimes you kind of have to play around to find the fault. And that's kind of the way it worked in this case. Is I'm 99% sure that my multifunction switch is toast. Doing my online research, it finds out that, they pretty much are toast easily. That's a pretty common TJ failure. And the thing I'll warn you, Scott, if you get a new one, now, of course, you're a parts guy, so you're going to have VIN number tracing and,
of course,
little courier elves that run around and go, no, that's the wrong one. A lot of them advertise as 97 through 06 common.
Right.
Wrong.
Okay.
They will sit, but they don't bolt up. According to the service manual, there's different connections, types of blocks. So save yourself the headache. For what I found, pulling up the actual number is, like many things on the TJ, 97 through 03 is one part number.
Yep.
And 4 through 6 is a different part number. So make sure you get the appropriate one. And lastly, there are 2 of them for each year.
Really?
Factory fog lights and non-factory fog lights. The little end of the light stalk pulls out for the fog lights to activate the fog light relay.
Okay.
If you get one without that, you'll never turn your fog lights on again if you have fog lights. And unfortunately, if you don't have fog lights and you put a fog light one in, the wiring end is not in the Jeep. So technically you can do that, and if you're competent enough to take a wire from that switch all the way to the relay box, and then from the relay box's output to the fog lights, you could do it. And I've done that kind of stuff before, but unless you're really crazy about crawling around the wiring of your Jeep, not.
Yeah. Well, that's like our one listener, Eugenio. I hope we got his name right. That looks like Eugenio, right? I mean, as far as I know, because he was chasing his charging issues.
Okay.
And he kind of like you talked about. Sometimes, you just got to be thorough. And good, luck would have it. He finally answered his own question because the alternator, he kind of just did his little tricks with the alternator. And you talked about like the mounting surfaces on the alternator. People don't think about that. Those are some things to think about because, again, like you said, where does the alternator ground to?
Yeah,
the body of the vehicle.
Right. That's probably one of the most common areas that I have seen with failures of people in their charging systems is the ground path. And I know I harp on that, folks. I'm sorry, but it's probably, by the time people come to me and ask for help, I'm going to say that 60% of the time, maybe a little bit more, it's not in the wires. It's in the grounding. And we don't think about the fact that, where's the alternator ground? If you've ever noticed, there's a plug on it that's got 2 wires in it, and that's your field controlled from the computer that controls the amount of amperage coming out.
Right.
And then you got one big fat red wire that goes to the battery. Unless you have a YJ, in which case it goes to fuse blocks, but should go to the battery. And we know about that one.
That subject.
That's a hot subject. So where does the other side of your alternator ground to? Magic, yes. It grounds through the engine block. And so
it grounds through the little guy named Kilroy that sits inside your engine bay going,
thank you, Warner Brothers. No, and so that's one of the things is the alternator itself. The body of the alternator is the negative line. In fact, you can do that. A dirty trick if you want to. If you can't get to your battery, like some of us can't get to easily, and you want to clip on a charger. Now, I wouldn't do this for major amperage, but it's got to be able to handle at least whatever amperage your alternator is designed for.
Right.
So if you have a 65 amp alternator, if you don't have more than a 65 amp charger, you can actually clamp the red lead onto that stud on the alternator, and then the negative lead just to the bracket, the body. And you watch it. It'll light up and say, oh, charging.
Interesting.
Because that goes straight to your battery.
Okay.
That's where the alternator pushes the current through.
Yeah.
Now, make sure your wiring does go straight to the battery. Like we do know from experience, the YJs did it kind of weird. They routed it via the fuse block. And there's only so much amperage that fuse block can take. And so if you have an upgraded alternator, like a friend of ours had, and then hooked it up to the factory wiring, the fuse block could not take the 135 amp alternator when he had a flat battery, and it proceeded to melt the fuse block until it caught fire.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing people like because you talk about like checking like by the time you help them, you know, all the big things have gone. It's the little things you don't think about, and that's why I think Eugenio found his problem.
Yeah.
Because being in the parts world, people walk up and go, well, I bought a defective alternator. I'm like, okay. You will get a defective alternator. It will happen because the law of averages. They make 100,000 units, 1% defective rate, which is reasonable, I'm assuming. Okay. What's 1% of 100,000?
Yeah.
Okay. Those are going to be defective. Now, are you going to get 2 of those in a row?
Probably not.
Probably not. We've had people come in with the 4th alternator that's wrong, and like you're talking about, by the time they get done installing and unstalling, they probably polished their mounting bracket enough to wear grounds.
Yeah, well, and that's the one that I check the most on the Jeep TJs in particular is the ground strap from the head, the back of the TJ 6-cylinder head to the body. I believe it's ground 105, G105, and G105 is the little silver strap that goes from the one rocker cover stud to the body. There's also the ground that's supposed to come from the negative terminal of the battery to the side of the engine block. Okay, that tab goes under sometimes a starter bolt. That normally there's a bolt right in the middle of the engine block that just as a bolted hole with a stud sticking out, and the nut goes on it. That one is the biggest one for the starter cranking and supposedly for charging, but a lot of the current can also go through that strap that's bolted to the head, which, by the way, is where the alternator bracket is, and goes to the body, which then goes directly into the battery. And I see grounds broken all the time, and then I continually see it's just not charging right,
That's why they had those little ground straps usually sold right next to the batteries in the parts store.
Yeah, and if you don't have the other wire, and I swear I could write a book on the other wire in your vehicle. Yeah. It's one of the frustrating things in the world for me is that have you checked the grounds? Oh, yeah, it's fine. All the way to the battery. Well, no. Well, you got to. Well, where are they?
Time to put
deep sigh.
You got to go digging.
Yeah, you got to go digging. And you know what? If it's not there, the one good thing about grounding, you can't have too much.
Yeah.
So if you don't see it, you can buy that black cable or that flat braided silver cable, and you can hook it up to the negative terminal of the battery. You can make your own to one of the bolts on the side of the engine block or the body or both.
Well, you talk about it all the time, like, the engine grounds, like engine drivability problems. Okay, you have a solid steel engine that's attached to the frame with rubber mounts.
Correct.
What insulates electricity? Rubber mounts.
Well, here's the really horrible thing, and this has happened on many, many vehicles. If you're running isolated mounts, the current is going to find a way back. And what if it has? What if it's through a bearing? What if the only piece of metal that's touching is the bearing pick something, that your transmission bearing, and you've got this bearing, and the bearing itself sits with a race on the engine side, and then the rollers, and then the sleeve, and you're passing 30 amps of current through it. Okay,
it's not long for this world.
No, it arc welds itself, little pits all over the place, and we've seen that happen. We've seen gear teeth in differentials have deposition of metal because that was where the current path. Now that really wasn't on Jeeps a whole lot because our axles are separate.
Right. This is the worst case outlier scenario.
Well, actually, it was very common in a very, very popular little vehicle. Can you guess?
No.
Kind of went down the road like
Volkswagen Beetle?
Volkswagen Beetles.
Oh.
The engine hangs on the transmission with only 4 bolts.
Oh, I know that.
And the transmission is mounted to the Y strut, the tunnel housing, with 4 bolts.
Right.
Okay. And there's a big old ground strap that's supposed to be there. Okay. That's supposed to ground the starter and everything like that. And if you start looking at the way the engine kind of hangs in the air on those bolts, if you don't have ground straps, the rubber isolators, you don't have a real good ground path anywhere.
Right.
And it usually finds it by going through the transmission, through the gears, and out the half shafts to the wheel bearings out at the outside, because that's the lowest resistance path. Is it perfect? Right. No, but it hadn't got any other choice. And I've seen more burned up Volkswagen gears, and people are like, oh, what caused all this erosion? I mean, to the point that, material's moving, and it's like, well, you don't have a ground path. And electricity, if it doesn't have it, but it can find it through an arc that it can jump, it's going to jump. And the problem is when it jumps, it takes a few molecules of metal with it.
Must pass it. You must pay a toll to go through.
Right. So anyhow, I can go on for hours and have, and I apologize, folks, on the ground subject, because it just keeps reoccurring. And the
reoccurring.
Reoccurring.
I know. I just try to be.
The smarter the car is, too, the worse it gets, because the ground path is critical to the operation of the electronics.
Yeah.
And at that point, now we're even beyond just putting wires on. You have to make sure that you don't create what's called ground loops. And that's where a lot of electronics, our computers, you switch the grounds to various devices. And if you don't have a single ground point that kind of sinks the energy back to the battery, and it has multiple paths, if you have more current on that path than this path, you've just created a small electrical loop that isn't in the wires. And I want to talk about seeing corrosion. Woo, doggy. That's one of those that makes dumping aluminum in salt water look easy.
Let's not go there.
Yeah, well, this is not a marine boat show.
Yeah, really.
But yeah, we've got some tweaking to do on the TJ, and got some other issues, that we're going to be fixing in the garage, and I guess that's pretty much it. Kind of like you, I've been busy building other things out at my friend's farm. Yeah. Scott got to go visit today and see this. And people's eyes were rolling. There's something called a shavings bin, and basically horses need a big kitty litter, which is just the wood shavings that come out of planer mills that are building your furniture and your flooring and all that stuff like that, and they put it down on the floor. Well, you got to store it. And when you start it off, and I think I've told you guys this time or two, but, you got to put it somewhere dry, because it doesn't work when it's soaking wet. The whole idea is to let the horse make it soaking wet.
Right.
And his old shed was just not really a shed. It was a 3-wall stall. The truck would dump it in there. They'd throw a tarp over it. And it worked fine when the guy was delivering it in a pickup truck. And it was kind of okay even when it came out in the little flatbed, one-axle dump. It started groaning and creaking and leaning a little bit when it came out in the dual-axle dump.
Right. And
then when the 18-wheeler came out, dump truck, and about the third load, it leaned back kind of like a drunken sailor against a lamppost.
What would you do with the drunken sailor?
Well, in our case, we just took the tractor and ripped it down.
Whoa.
And then Scott came out and actually helped us do some form work. We filled in the hole, compacted it, and then did some major form work and put down about 6 inches of concrete, and then built this massive timber frame wall assembly that should be able to take, just about any kind of an impact, I hope.
Yeah.
And then he just got to see today the roof system that we're building, and it's unique because you're going to be able to hit a button and it will open up like a clam.
Open sesame.
Yep.
Can I get out there and can I control it going, hiya, feed me, and make it do like the puppet thing?
No.
Dang it.
That's not going to move that fast.
Have it open.
I'm sure the barn owner would love you to paint teeth on it, but that would be pretty wild to have a building there.
Look at those big googly eyes in the top.
Put have it in the dark, and then hang cut some shower curtains up to make them look like fangs.
Yeah.
And so the doors would swing open, the teeth would be there, and then the jaws would open up. And then what you'd have to do is be in a zombie suit and stumble outside like you were the last meal, half digested.
It's a shaving bin Rex.
Oh.
Well, this is very quickly degrading into a show about Tyrannosaurus Rex. We're tired, guys. It's been a long day.
No, but anywho, yeah, the garage has been a little quiet lately. Been cleaning house, trying to do a couple of things, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Yeah, because we're ramping up to go to SEMA.
We are. We're getting things packed. We're getting things, trying to go through the SEMA app to decide who we're going to go see, when we're going to go see it. And the financial department's going what shows they want to see, what what restaurants they want to go eat at.
Well, Dory's actually looking at a Doom Buggy Adventure.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
No, I'm not. I'm being serious. She's actually looking at Doom Buggy Adventure. She found one.
I'm sure you can find anything in Las Vegas.
She's like, it's only 30 minutes, and they'll come pick you up at the hotel. I'm like, you know what? It's our anniversary weekend, kind of not really, but in a way, why not? Because honestly, I am. By the time this show airs, I am 1 week away from my life being a whole lot better.
You hope.
I hope so. This will be a nice vacation to really just kind of.
Yeah, but I'm going to be the SOB going, yes, but we have listeners we made promises to. We are going to walk the floor.
We're doing the Doom Buggy show Sunday before Dad gets in town.
Dad's not. What I was going to say was if you're off goofing off, I can't. You're a big boy. I'm joking. Not your father. Nice try. No, I'm going to be out there, asking questions, finding people, seeing what I can find for folks, and seeing what swag I can score.
Exactly. So again, you guys got any questions for Kevin for SEMA? You guys want to know the end? Kevin can speak engineering. Get in there with these guys and start really talking shop, because the emails you guys send us, again, thank you.
Yeah.
You guys really send us. We want more technical, and sometimes Kevin and I wonder, will the technical put our audience to sleep? No, you guys have said, you guys have spoken. You like the technical. You send questions to Kevin. That gives us show content. We really appreciate everything you guys send us. So please keep things coming. Another thing, too, is, again, check out the Patreon page. That keeps us, again, listener supported. So when we go to these events, we won't get in trouble for talking to a different manufacturer that's sponsoring the show.
Yeah.
So that really helps us out a lot too.
It does. We want to keep this your show. We've always said that, and that's the intent. And for those of you who are Patreons, know what's going on. But I'll tease out to those of you who are not. If you join our Patreon group, we video most of the shows, the actual recording, and it starts well before the content that we air on the podcast, including the bloopers, mistakes, and background images.
Yeah, and me getting up constantly to fix the camera that's vexing me. Still almost there, but the money goes towards equipment. Like, we have studio lighting in here.
Yeah,
we have 2 GoPros running. We have a SLR camera that's running
most of the time.
Most of the time. But again, this is money that whatever money is given to us, and that's why we have big thank you to our Patreons, because right now we have what's called Trail Team 1.
Right.
And we're in the process of getting them out stickers that are only available. People have asked us, hey, how do I get a sticker? How do I do this? This is one way to do it. You can start as little as $1 a month.
Yeah. So we appreciate that, and again, it's all to try and keep it your show. Believe me, I couldn't think up most of this stuff on my own.
Yeah. No, and again, you guys, if you can't be a patron, tell a friend, get out there and share the show, because again, Cox Media talking to us, all these other people talking to us. So again, thank you very much. But with that though, I think and videos. We have really cool videos.
Well, that's where I was going when you hijacked what I was saying. He gets excited, folks. But yeah, the Patreon page includes links to the videos of these shows and other videos that we're doing.
And
even a few Easter eggs, and we're working on that stuff. We had a video session today learning how to do some editing, and so there's some nice surprises, but they're only available on Patreons.
Yep. So with that,
for now.
Well, I think it's time. We've done enough talking right now.
I do believe we have time to go out and lock some hubs, put her in 4-low, and hit the trail.
And remember, as always, to take nothing but pictures, memories, and your trash when you leave the... I got it right.
Boom, jagalaka. Except you didn't finish it before you had to chime in, but go ahead.
Okay, so I spiked the ball before I went into the end zone.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
It wouldn't be me if it wasn't any other way, right?
This is true.
So cool.
All right, folks. Well, thanks again, and look forward to the next show. And again, if you have any questions for us, for SEMA, email it, Facebook it, however you want to get it to us. Yep. I'd love to know what you want to see or hear or find out about.
Exactly. Thanks, guys.
All right, bye.
Proceeding has been provided for entertainment only. Proper service and repair procedures are vital to the safe, reliable operation of all motor vehicles, as well as personal safety of those performing those repairs. Standard safety procedures and precaution, including the use of safety goggles and proper tools and equipment, should be followed at all times to eliminate the possibility of personal injury or improper service which could damage the vehicle or compromise its safety.
What he said. Thanks a lot for listening, guys. You guys have a great day.
Bye.
This has been a Bent Axle Media production.